Hey guys, and welcome to Last Week in DeFi. This week, HyperEVM has launched. So HyperLiquid is, as you probably know, it's like the fastest DEX, and it's doing quite well. Even now, the volume is doing pretty good, and now they have a EVM. So it's like a general purpose blockchain. I actually did not have very high hopes for this thing because I looked at the documents, and the documents were just not very inspiring. If you look at Arbitrum documents, it's extremely well documented, very comprehensive. It has a quick start. You could be like a beginner Solidity developer and you could go through this and figure it out. But like for HyperLiquid, it's like there's no hand holding. It's if you have looked through the HyperLiquid docs before, it's just extremely utilitarian. Like it gives you exactly what you need and it's concise, which is good, but then it's just not there's no hand holding whatsoever. You just gotta figure it out. So yeah, but it is live. There's actual apps on here. You can see these apps, but there's actually also some third-party apps. I think these are like made by teams which are related to Hyperliquid itself, possibly. But anyways, there's other ones now. Just going through our last week in DeFi. If I look up hype, there are quite a few. So this is another project from Hyperliquid itself. Last week, this is HyperUnit. This is like a BTC, native BTC on Hyperliquid. So it's like allowing you to bridge your BTC to trade on Hyperliquid. But besides that one, there's other stuff as well. So let's see. dBridge has it's a bridging solution. They are now supporting Hyperliquid. Pyth Network now has Oracle's Derive is licensing its risk engine to HyperDelta. So that's like a options protocol. And let's see. TimeSwap launched today. So basically, there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of reasons to be launching on Hyperliquid because this is like a chain. TVL is growing, volume is super good, so you want to be where the action is. So even though the developer experience probably could be a lot better, but I think there's a lot of projects that want to get on to Hyperliquid. Cool. And then the other big news last week was ByBit getting hacked. This was like the biggest hack in history. And it happened it happened in relation to Safe. And I feel bad for ByBit and also it's just a really bad thing. But one thing good from this is that Safe may actually try to improve its security experience, which is a weird thing to say because like most people think, oh, multi-sigs are safer, but Safe has this weird thing where when you sign a safe transaction on a ledger, like oftentimes you end up signing like a blind signing transaction, or basically you don't get that much information on the ledger itself a lot of the times. So anyways, it seems like that sort of happened here where the ByBit people, they were using Safe and then they had a hacked UI. So I guess their computers were compromised and then the transactions that they signed look like legit transactions, but they were not. And then the transactions they signed on their Ledger wallet were the wrong ones, and they sent the money elsewhere to North Korea, basically. And there's a really easy solution to this thing for institutional people and even regular people, and it's just to use a different device for transactions than your regular computer. Because your regular computer, you're wandering all over the internet, picking up bugs and stuff, clicking on weird emails. You should have a separate computer where the only thing you do is you sign transactions. So the easiest way to do this is to use just an old laptop instead of just throwing away your laptop or selling it. Keep your old laptop and maybe wipe it down, maybe install Linux on it if it's not a Mac. If it's a Mac, I think it's relatively safe, but maybe stop using it for other stuff besides transactions. Maybe even like factory resetter or something if you want to be super safe. I think Macs are pretty safe. You can also use a phone. Phones are surprisingly safe. Yeah, because yeah, with phones, oftentimes you also have like biometric security. Sometimes they have like hardware security modules if it's like an iPhone. It's just a really good way to have a secure environment for crypto transactions. And with phones, you can install something like you can install like Zerion. Let's see. Yeah, so you can install Zerion. You'll have a nice big interface. And the nice thing about a phone is I'm not sure I would like completely substitute a ledger with a phone, but compared to a ledger, like you have a much bigger surface area for transactions, so you can see a lot more information. A lot of times you can see the transaction details more clearly. Get a phone, set it up with use Wallet Connect to sign transactions, and that's actually going to be like relatively secure. And finally, or you can also buy an old phone. I would say an iPhone would be preferable, or a MacBook would be preferable. I was looking at eBay, and you can actually get old MacBooks. You don't want to get too old. You want to have something called the T2 chip. But I think most MacBooks after 2017 have that. And yeah, they're pretty cheap. So I think around $400. This one is 269 or a 350 or so after delivery. So they're not too expensive, and yeah, they'll really boost your security. This is probably the biggest thing you can do for your crypto security, I would say. Yeah, you definitely want to get a hardware wallet as well, but like just this, even just doing this with a really basic hardware wallet, or even if you don't have a hardware wallet and you have an old phone, using the old phone to sign transactions is a really good stopgap, or even it's even a decent substitute for a hardware wallet, I would say. As long as that phone is relatively secure, you're not taking it everywhere with you, and it's got a good password or biometric security to unlock it. And then finally, I would say that the last thing that you can do to improve your security is to let me just not record my password. Use Rabi. So Rabi is like a alternative to MetaMask, which is way more secure. It's so the difference between Rabi and MetaMask is that when you sign a transaction on Rabi, like you can see all the details. This is a send transaction, so it's not a good example, but it will show you all the details of the transaction. So it simulates the transaction in advance. You can see the balance transfers, the balance changes. And when you send a transaction on Rabi, you also actually have to actually add it to a whitelist. If it's not on the whitelist, you can't send it. So actually, if the ByBit was using Rabi, the hack would not have happened because the hacker's address would not have been on the whitelist. And you may say, oh, what if Rabi gets hacked? And it's possible as well, especially if your computer is entirely compromised. But my understanding is that browser extensions are actually harder to hack or harder to emulate than other applications or websites in particular. Even if you use this on your main computer, it would be better than using MetaMask for sure. But if you use this on a computer that you only use for transactions, that's going to be pretty ideal. Yeah. And Rabi even supports multisigs. So you can actually add a multisig to this and you can sign it through there. And if ByBit had been using Rabi to sign its multisig transactions, I don't think that hack would actually have occurred. So there's just so many things that they could have done and so many things that you can do. Use a separate computer for transactions or use a phone to sign transactions. Hardware wallet is good, although in the case of ByBit, I don't think that would have been the key point. It would have been making sure the environment that you sign transactions in is secure. Yeah. So yeah, that's mostly it. More of a security update this week than a DeFi update, but hopefully it's still useful for you guys because security is like crazy important. Most people overlook it. And yeah, stay subscribed to our YouTube if you want to keep up to date with DeFi. And we also have like more analysis these days. Like we have, let's see, recently we did a interview with Liquidity, and we're also doing some ecosystem analysis. So every week we'll check TVLs and chain activity. So lots of useful stuff. And then if you want to stay in tune with all the nitty gritty, you can also go to our site today, DeFi.com, and we have our links to our newsletter and research articles and all that good stuff.